Hey peeps, Tyler here with an in-depth book review for Proof of Heaven, a Neurosurgeon's Journey into the Afterlife by Eben Alexander, MD. And by in-depth, I mean I have notes on my computer because this is a library book, so I couldn't annotate it. So I'll be looking at them. I might have to buy it because I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads and Storygraph. My link tree is in the description. So, yeah, Proof of Heaven, a scientist's case for the afterlife. Thousands of people have had near-death experiences, but scientists have argued that they are impossible. Dr. Eben Alexander was one of those scientists. A highly trained neurosurgeon, Alexander knew that NDEs feel real, but are simply fantasies produced by brains under extreme stress. Then, Dr. Alexander's own brain was attacked by a rare illness, the part of the brain that controls thought and emotion, and in a sense makes us human, shut down completely. For 7 days he lay in a coma. Then, as his doctors considered stopping treatment, Alexander's eyes popped open. He had come back. Alexander's recovery is a medical miracle, but the real miracle of his story lies elsewhere. While his body lay in coma, Alexander journeyed beyond this world and encountered an angelic being who guided him into the deepest realms of superphysical existence. There he met and spoke with the divine source of the universe itself. Alexander's story is not a fantasy. Before he underwent his journey, he could not reconcile his knowledge of neuroscience with any belief in heaven, God, or the soul. Today, Alexander is a doctor who believes that true health could be achieved only when we realize that God and the soul are real, and that death is not the end of personal existence, but only a transition. This story would be remarkable no matter who it happened to. That it happened to Dr. Alexander makes it revolutionary. No scientist or person of faith will be able to ignore it. Reading it will change your life. So yeah. I read this, like I said, I gave it 5 stars, and we'll be going in depth. So, get a drink or a snack if you want. I don't know exactly how long this will be, so yeah. Everything, on page 46, says everything was distinct, yet everything was also a part of everything else, like the rich and intermingled designs on a Persian carpet, or a butterfly's wing. And there's a girl he sees on a butterfly's wing while he's in, like, the gateway, and the gateway being, like, kind of... At some point I'll end up reading that section where there's, people, and it's green and nice, and... Anyway. He does go back and forth between what he was experiencing in his coma, as well as what his, the family and friends told him what was going on and everything, so you learned what was going on and how they were feeling and whatnot. So, and the next one says, I will occasionally use like OM, it's OM, as the pronoun for God because I originally used that name in my writings after my coma. Om was the sound I remembered hearing associated with that omniscient, omnipotent, and unconditionally loving God, but any descriptive word falls short. And stuff will make more sense as I go through. Oops, this one page too far. Later, when I was back here in the world, I found a quotation by the 17th century Christian poet Henry Vaughan that came close to describing this place, this vast, inky black core that was the home of the divine itself. There is, some say, in God a deep but dazzling darkness. That was it, exactly, an inky darkness that was also full to brimming with light. Dark and light combined, part of the whole. Intermingled, yin and yang. This is what I'm, saying, explaining. There was, like it says, an inky darkness that was also full to brimming with light. Yin and yang, you know how it's different places, religions. Through the orb, told me that there is not one universe but many, in fact more than I could conceive. But that love lay at the center of them all. Evil was present in all the other universes as well, but only in the tiniest trace amounts. Evil was necessary because without it, free will wasn't possible. And without free will, there could be no growth, no forward movement, no chance for us to become what God longed for us to be. Horrible and all-powerful as evil sometimes seemed to be in a world like ours, in the larger picture, love was overwhelmingly dominant, and it would ultimately be triumphant. Sorry, I wrote or typed the wrong number down. I was going back away from the core. Its inky bright darkness faded into the green landscape of the gateway, with all of its dazzling landscape. Looking down, I saw the villagers again, the trees and sparkling streams and the waterfalls, as well as the arcing angel beings above. So that's the gateway I had mentioned before. Villagers, trees and sparkling streams and waterfalls, arcing angel beings. Kind of reminded me of what I've heard the Summerlands, which is like the Wiccan version of heaven, basically, just by a different name. It kind of sounds like that to me. Heaven, Summerlands, all goes by different names. Or at least, I mean, it's called the Gateway, so there's that. That's what he calls it, anyway. Science, the science to which I've devoted so much of my life, doesn't contradict what I learned up there. But far too many people believe it does, because certain members of the scientific community who are pledged to the materialist worldview have insisted again and again that science and spirituality cannot coexist. They are mistaken. Making this ancient but ultimately basic fact more widely known is why I have written this book, and it renders all the other aspects of my story, the mystery of how I contracted my illness, of how I managed to be conscious in another dimension for the week of my coma, and how I somehow recovered so completely, entirely secondary. The unconditional love and acceptance that I experienced on my journey is the single most important discovery I have ever made, or will ever make, and as hard as I know it's going to be to unpack the other lessons I learned while there, I also know in my heart that sharing this very basic message, one so simple that most children readily accept it, is the most important task I have. Each of the, or not each of them, a few of the chapters also have a quote. This one has an Albert Einstein quote: "The true value of a human being is determined primarily by the measure and the sense in which he has attained liberation from the self." Which is also something I've been hearing a lot about as well. But also, there's different versions and interpretations. It is page 76. Now, however, I understood that I was part of the divine, and that nothing, absolutely nothing, could ever take that away. The false suspicion that we can somehow be separated from God is the root of every form of anxiety in the universe, and the cure for it, which I received partially within the gateway and completely within the core, was the knowledge that nothing can tear us from God, ever. This knowledge, and it remains the single most important thing I've ever learned, robbed the realm of the earthworm's eye view of its terror, and allowed me to see it for what it really was. Not entirely pleasant, but no doubt necessary part of the cosmos. I'm sure the earthworm's eye thing doesn't make any sense to you if you haven't read the book. But that's not what's important. Now, however, I understood that I was part of the divine, and that nothing, absolutely nothing, could ever take that away. And everything else is what's important there. And then there's a quote by Isaac B. Singer: "We must believe in free will. We have no choice." That's a hell of a quote. From the core, my understanding of what we call dark energy and dark matter seemed to have clear explanations, as did far more advanced components of the makeup of our universe that humans won't address for ages. This doesn't mean, however... Oh, no, wait. That was the end of it. That humans won't address for ages. So, yeah. basically in the core, I guess, with one with God, the divine, whatever you want to call it, source. You just end up knowing everything. You wonder something, you immediately end up knowing it. Dark energy and dark matter seem to have clear explanations, as did far more advanced components of the makeup of our universe that humans would address for ages. But everything I'm getting from this, as you can tell with the science, is something that always made sense to me. That's science and spirituality are one and the same. I never understood why people think they're separate. I never understood that, frankly. Like, wouldn't God or the divine or whatever just be the one that made all the science? Honestly, that's the only way I've ever been able to understand it. I don't know why people separate them. And I never have, to be frank. To experience thinking outside the brain is to enter a world of instantaneous connections that make ordinary thinking, i.e., those aspects limited by the physical brain and the speed of light, seem like some hopelessly sleepy and plodding event. Our truest and deepest self is completely free. It is not crippled or compromised by past actions or concerned with identity or status. It comprehends that it has no need to fear the earthly world, and therefore it has no need to build itself up through fame or wealth or conquest. This is the true spiritual self that all of us are destined someday to recover. But until that day comes, I feel we should do everything in our power to get in touch with this miraculous aspect of ourselves, to cultivate it and bring it to light. This is the being living within all of us right now, and that is, in fact, the being that God truly intends us to be. How do we get closer to this genuine spiritual self? By manifesting love and compassion. Why? Because love and compassion are far more than the abstractions many of us believe them to be. They are real, they are concrete, and they make up the very fabric of the spiritual realm. In order to return to that realm, we must once again become like that realm, even while we are stuck in and plodding through this one. One of the biggest mistakes people make when they think about God is to imagine God as impersonal. Yes, God is behind the numbers, the perfection of the universe that science measures and struggles to understand. But again, paradoxically, Om is human as well, even more human than you and I are. Om understands and sympathizes with our human situation more profoundly and personally than we can even imagine, because Om knows what we have forgotten and understands the terrible burden it is to live with amnesia of the divine for even a moment. Also, he wrote down his experiences first, the experiences he had while he was in his coma, before reading up on NDEs, thanks to his son mentioning it, because that being scientific. Writing down all his experiences once he woke up from his coma, from while he was in the coma, before reading up on other NDEs that other people had had. So that's also important to note. And then at some point he does finally read into NDEs once he writes down all his experiences and realizes they all have similarities back far, far in time. And then on page 140 there's a Sir John C. Ickles, don't know if I said that right, quote, "I maintain that the human mystery is incredibly demeaned by scientific reductionism, with its claim in promissory materialism to account eventually for all of the spiritual world in terms of patterns of neuronal activity. This belief must be classed as a superstition. We have to recognize that we are spiritual beings with souls existing in a spiritual world, as well as material beings with bodies and brains existing in a material world." So, for me, it's like, it makes me think I am both my spiritual eternal soul as well as Tyler, a mortal human. I believe all my lives live on in my soul for eternity, in a way, in memory. Even after my body dies, we don't forget what we've learned and experienced, not deep down. Therefore, I am part of the divine, of Source, and human, 100%. These are my thoughts. You don't necessarily have to agree with me. You can think I'm a Looney Tune. If that's the case and you're still here, thank you for watching anyway. And then in chapter 31, it has all the scientific explanations requiring a functioning neocortex, which, unlike most coma patients, he didn't have at all. His neocortex was completely offline. And then there's a Rene Descartes quote. If you would be a real seeker of truth, it is necessary that at least once in your life you doubt as far as possible all things. Which makes sense with me, because frankly, I want to know all the truth and learn and all this stuff. And for a few years, I was like a late teenager, I was an atheist, and then it's like, yeah, if you would be a real seeker after truth, it does make sense that at least once in your life you doubt as far as possible all things. I definitely get that. I mean, if you just believe everything without doubting stuff at one point in your life, how are you ever really going to know? I don't know if what I just said made sense, but and then chapter 33 is titled The Enigma of Consciousness. It mentions how consciousness exists separately from your brain. Plus, it talks about how technically there are no objects in the universe. In the 1920s, the physicist Werner Heisenberg and other founders of the science of quantum mechanics made a discovery so strange that the world has yet to completely come to terms with it. When observing subatomic phenomena, it is impossible to completely separate the observer, that is, the scientist making the experiment, from what is being observed. In our day-to-day world, it is easy to miss this fact. We see the universe as a place full of separate objects, tables and chairs, people and planets, that occasionally interact with each other, but that nonetheless remain essentially separate. On the subatomic level, however, this universe of separate objects turns out to be a complete illusion. In the realm of the super small, every object in the physical universe is intimately connected with every other object. In fact, there are really no objects in the world at all, only vibrations of energy and relationships. What that meant should have been obvious, though it wasn't to many. It was impossible to pursue the core reality of the universe without using consciousness. Far from being an unimportant byproduct of physical processes, as I had thought before my experience, consciousness is not only very real, it's actually more real than the rest of physical existence, and most likely the basis of it all. But neither of these insights has yet been truly incorporated into science's picture of reality. Many scientists are trying to do so, but as of yet there is no unified theory of everything that can combine the laws of quantum mechanics with those of relativity theory in a way that begins to incorporate consciousness. All the objects in the physical universe are made up of atoms. Atoms, in turn, are made up of protons, electrons, and neutrons. These, in turn, are, as physicists also discovered in the early years of the 20th century, all particles, and particles are made up of, well, quite frankly, physicists don't really know. But one thing we do know about particles is that each one is connected to every other one in the universe. They are all, at the deepest level, interconnected. We are truly all one, and all one with the divine, with source, with God. Divine, source, God, it's all the same thing to me. And I think we are literally the universe experiencing itself. Everything is energy. Everything. Even you and me and everything else. This pencil is energy. The hard problem is so hard to resolve that some thinkers have said the answer lies outside of science altogether, but that it lies outside the bounds of current science in no way belittles the phenomenon of consciousness. In fact, it is a clue as to its unfathomably profound role in the universe. The ascendance of the scientific method based solely in the physical realm of the past 400 years presents a major problem. We have lost touch with the deep mystery at the center of existence, our consciousness. It was, under different names and expressed through different worldviews, something known well and held close by pre-modern religions. But it was lost to our secular Western culture as we became increasingly enamored with the power of modern science and technology. For all of the successes of Western civilization, the world has paid a dear price in terms of the most crucial component of existence, our human spirit, the shadow side of high technology, modern warfare and thoughtless homicide and suicide, urban blight, ecological mayhem, cataclysmic climate change, polarization of economic resources is bad enough. Much worse, our focus on exponential progress in science and technology has left many of us relatively bereft in the realm of meaning and joy, and of knowing how our lives fit into the grand scheme of existence for all eternity. I never heard Ohm's voice directly, nor saw Ohm's face. It was as if Ohm spoke to me through thoughts that were like wave walls rolling through me, rocking everything around me, and showing that there is a deeper fabric of existence, a fabric that all of us are always part of, but which we're generally not conscious of. So I was communicating directly with God? Absolutely. Expressed that way, it sounds grandiose, but when it was happening, it didn't feel that way. Instead, I felt like I was doing what every soul is able to do when they leave their bodies, and what we can all do right now through various methods of prayer or deep meditation. Communicating with God is the most extraordinary experience imaginable, but at the same time, it's the most natural one of all, because God is present in us at all times. Omniscient, omnipotent, personal, and loving us without conditions, we're connected as one through our divine link with God. Wasn't even planning to read that paragraph, but felt like it. Another Albert Einstein quote, "I must be willing to give up what I am in order to become what I will be." That is very true for me right now. If you believe in astrology, I'm an Aquarius sun. Pluto's in Aquarius. And Venus, which is my chart ruler, is also in Aquarius. I'm a Libra rising. And yeah, that... Oh, yeah. One. And then, so about the author had been given up for adoption as a baby because his birth parents were teenagers when they had him. He later found out that they had gotten married and had a few kids later. One of the siblings he didn't know he had, a sister, had already passed away. There had been a girl in a butterfly ring showing him around, like the gateway, when he was in his coma. So, the next morning, I was in our bedroom reading more of the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross book on life after death, when I came to a story about a 12-year-old girl who underwent an NDE and at first didn't tell her parents about it. Finally, however, she could no longer keep it to herself and confided in her father. She told him about traveling to an incredible landscape full of love and beauty and how she met and was comforted by her brother. "The only problem," the girl told her father, "is that I don't have a brother." Tears filled her father's eyes. He told the girl about the brother she did indeed have, but who had died just 3 months before she was born. I stopped reading. For a moment I went into a strange, dazed space, not really thinking or not thinking, just absorbing something, some thought that was right on the edge of my consciousness but hadn't quite broken through. Then my eyes traveled over to the Baru and the photo that Kathy had sent me, the photo of the sister I had never known, whom I knew only through the stories that my birth family had related, of what a hugely kind, wonderful, caring person she had been, a person they had often said, who was so kind she was practically an angel. Without the powder blue and indigo dress, without the heavenly light of the gateway around her as she sat on the beautiful butterfly wing, she wasn't easy to recognize at first, but that was only natural. I had seen her heavenly self, the one that lived above and beyond this earthly realm with all its tragedies and cares. But now there was no mistaking her, no mistaking the loving smile, the confident and infinitely comforting look, the sparkling blue eyes. It was she. He had never even seen a picture of her at the point he was in his coma. It wasn't until after he woke up and months later, his birth family, that he finally got in contact with, set up a photo of his sister who had passed away. She was the girl in the butterfly wing. So yeah, and that's, as you see, I've gone through different parts of the book that I wanted to share. I really enjoyed this book. If maybe this is the first video you're seeing of me, I'm not a Christian, but I grew up a Christian, and it's been a journey, but long story short, now I am spiritual, and I don't really have a religion at this point. I just say I'm spiritual. And I've noticed there's, like, similarities in every religion. Religion after religion after religion, there are similarities. I mean, yeah, there's also people screwing things up, but there's also those deep truths and similarities, and this is definitely, I'm really glad I picked this up, because it says something I've felt all along, that science and spirituality are one and the same. They don't need to be separated. I would love to know your thoughts down below. Comment, like, share, subscribe, hit the bell if you want to. So yeah, thank you for watching, and have a nice day. Blessed be.